Electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
Amendment votes to a bill that would declare a presidential permit is not required to approve the Keystone XL pipeline northern route. 2-minute vote here on Hank Johnson's amendment, which would require a study of the health effects of increased air pollution. Well, it was just about 24 hours ago that the Senate Judiciary Committee approved in committee the 13-10 was the vote of the Immigration and Border Security Bill. The House Judiciary Committee Chairman, meanwhile, Bob Goodlatte of Virginia, saying this afternoon, according to the Associated Press, that the bill passed by the committee on a bipartisan vote, quote, falls far short of what is needed to end the problem of illegal immigration and is unlikely to secure the border. Bob Goodlatte will be our guest tomorrow morning on Washington Journal at 8:15 Eastern. The program, of course, starts live every morning at 7 a.m.
Yes.
Mr. Royce. Mr. Royce votes no. Ms. Captor. Off no on aye for Ms. Captor.
On this vote, the ayes are 177, the nays are 239. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for recorded vote on amendment number 4, printed in the House Report 11388 by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the nays prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 4, printed in House Report number 113-88, offered by Mr. Connolly of Virginia.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of a request for a recorded vote shall rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
Gerry Connolly of Virginia with an amendment to the Keystone XL pipeline bill, which would require assessment of the pipeline's vulnerability to a terrorist attack. 2-minute vote and some 5 additional amendment votes coming up on the Keystone bill. Initially, earlier today, the thinking was that the House would move final passage of this bill to tomorrow, but it looks like they will wrap up work this evening with a likely Democratic motion to recommit and final passage coming up tonight. And the House is in early tomorrow, 9 o'clock Eastern. Live coverage, of course, here on C-SPAN. And the major legislation tomorrow is a bill that would tie the interest rates on federal student loans to the 10-year Treasury note.
On this vote, the yeas are 176, the nays are 239. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 5, printed in House Report 11388 by the gentleman from West Virginia, Mr. Rahall, on which few of the proceedings were postponed and on which the nays prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 5, printed in House Report number 113-88, offered by Mr. Rahall of West Virginia.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
The underlying bill the House has been working on would allow construction of the northern portion of the Keystone XL pipeline. Nick Rahall of West Virginia in the past has supported the pipeline, has expressed support for the pipeline, but opposes the bill and proposes an amendment which essentially guts the bill. His amendment would eliminate the provision in the bill approving the pipeline extension. Again, a 2-minute vote and 4 more amendment votes ahead. Also a Democratic motion to recommit and final passage still coming up this evening.
On this vote, the yeas are 177, the nays are 238. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 6, printed in the House Report 11388 by the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. Esty, on which further proceedings were postponed, and in which the nays prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 6, printed in House Report number 113-88, offered by Ms. Esty of Connecticut.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
All but one of the 10 amendments the House considered to the Keystone XL pipeline bill have been Democratic amendments. This one by Elizabeth Esty of Connecticut would guarantee oversight of the pipeline's operations and maintenance. Meanwhile, over in the Senate, another day of working on the Farm Bill, the 5-year reauthorization of farm and nutrition programs. They've been considering amendments. They rejected a Republican amendment that would turn federal food stamp programs, the program, over to the states, known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. The food stamp program is administered by the Agriculture Department. Senator Inhofe's amendment would have converted the program into a grant for states. That fell by a vote of 60 to 36. Another amendment fell that would have reformed the U.S. sugar program. Debate continues on the Farm Bill in the Senate. That's on C-SPAN 2.
On this vote, the yeas are 183, the nays 233.
Ms. Lee of California. Off aye on no for Ms. Lee of California.
On this vote, the yeas are 182, the nays are 234. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for a recorded vote on amendment number 7, printed in House Report 11388 by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the nays prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 7, printed in House Report number 113-88, offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
Amendment votes to the bill that says a presidential permit is not required for approval of the Keystone XL Pipeline Northern Route from Hardisty, Alberta, Canada to Steel City, Nebraska. This amendment by Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas would lengthen the time period for a person to file a claim against the pipeline from 60 days to 1 year. President Obama this weekend, Sunday, will be in Oklahoma City touring the damage from the tornadoes of earlier this week. His Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano is out there, as well as the FEMA director. We covered a news conference from earlier today, and you can see that in our video library at cspan.org. During that news conference, they indicated that as many as 13,000 homes were affected by the tornadoes and up to $2 billion in overall damage.
Mr. Enyart. Mr. Enyart votes aye. Mr. Brady of Texas. Voted no.
On this vote, the yeas are 182, the nays are 234. The amendment is not agreed to. The unfinished business is a request for recorded vote on amendment number 8, printed in the House Report 11388 by the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Chu, on which further proceedings are postponed and on which the nays prevail by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 8, printed in House Report number 113-88, offered by Ms. Chu of California.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
Democrat Judy Chu with an amendment to the Keystone bill, which would require a study on the cost of cleaning up a potential oil spill from the pipeline. One more 2-minute vote will follow, and we expect a Democratic motion to recommit and final passage ahead here in the House. Meanwhile, tomorrow in the House, they will return early, 9 o'clock Eastern tomorrow. They will take up the bill that would tie interest rates, student loan interest rates, to the 10-year Treasury rate. Again, 9 o'clock start for the House tomorrow. The Senate still has voting on a number of presidential nominations, but nominees continue to get hearings before Senate committees. Anthony Fox, the mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, today on Capitol Hill. He's President Obama's nominee to be Transportation Secretary. We covered that hearing. We'll show it to you later in our schedule. You can also see it at cspan.org. Tomorrow we'll cover the confirmation hearing for Commerce Secretary nominee Penny Pritzker. That'll be live at 11 a.m. Eastern over on C-SPAN 3.
On this vote, the yeas are 185, the nays are 231. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is a request for recorded vote on amendment number 10, printed in the House Report 11388 by the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Holt, on which further proceedings were postponed, on which the nays prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 10, printed in House Report number 113-88, offered by Mr. Holt of New Jersey.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
It's the last amendment vote to the Keystone Bill, a bill that would approve the Keystone XL pipeline northern route from Canada to refineries in Nebraska. Under current law, the State Department decides on whether to approve the pipeline. Last amendment vote, this is by Democrat Holt from New Jersey, which would require all oil transported by the pipeline through the Keystone Pipeline to be used in the United States and not exported unless the president finds that an exception is required by law. It's a 2-minute vote. We expect a debate on a motion to recommit, a last chance to change the bill, coming up shortly.
On this vote, the yeas are 1.
Mr. Franks. Mr. Franks of Arizona votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 162, the nays are 255. The amendment is not adopted. The question is on the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amendment. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rules of the committee, rises.
To him. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has under consider H.R. 3 and pursuant to House Resolution 228, I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted to the Committee of the Whole.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union reports that the committee has had under consideration the bill H.R. 3 and pursuant to House Resolution 228 reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. In a separate vote, demanded on any amendment to the amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole. If not, the question is on adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is on the engrossed and third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to approve the construction, operation, and maintenance of the Keystone XL pipeline and for other purposes.
The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
In its current form, I am.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report on the motion.
Mr. Bishop of New York moves to recommit the bill H.R. 3 to the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. At the end of the bill, add the following new section. Section 9, requirement that TransCanada Keystone Pipeline LP pay for any oil spill cleanup on American soil. In the approval process authorized under this Act, TransCanada Keystone Pipeline LP.
Mr. Speaker, could I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading of the amendment?
Is there objection to the dispensing of the reading? If not, so ordered. The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Bishop-Capps amendment is the final amendment to the bill. It will not kill the bill or send it back to committee. If adopted, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage as amended. Our amendment, which is similar to amendments offered during our committee markups of H.R. 3, corrects a massive loophole in current law that exempts Keystone XL pipeline tar stands from paying millions of dollars in the oil spill liability trust fund.
Suspend. The House is not in order. The gentleman deserves to be heard. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unlike U.S. crude oil companies, tar sands importers will not pay into the Oil Spill Trust Fund, even though the trust fund will be used to pay for any cleanup costs from an oil spill on the Keystone XL pipeline. That's right. The Keystone XL pipeline and all other tar sands importers get all of the protections of the fund if they have an oil spill, but they do not have to pay a dime into it up front. As we have seen during the Keystone debate on this floor, we can argue over the merits of tar sands oil, and we can argue over the merits of granting special permit waivers to TransCanada to build the Keystone pipeline. However, I would hope that we could all agree that this Congress should not allow the importers of Keystone pipeline tar sands to avoid the per-barrel charge that all other oil companies pay to finance the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund. In 2011, the Internal Revenue Service concluded that the definitions of crude oil and petroleum product in the tax code do not clearly include tar sands. This interpretation, if allowed to stand, exempts the Keystone XL pipeline tar sands from the excise tax that finances the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund. In short, this is a $66,000 per day tax break. I am sure that some of my Republican colleagues will argue that H.R. 3 is not the appropriate vehicle for making this change to the law. We should not single out Keystone XL pipeline, and the Congress should consider this change as a part of comprehensive tax reform. To my colleagues across the aisle, I would argue that this entire bill is about singling out the Keystone XL pipeline, providing special rules, and deeming permits approved for everything anyone can think of. Our amendment will ensure that TransCanada certifies to the President that Keystone XL pipeline tar sands will be subject to the per-barrel excise tax that funds the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund, ensuring that they pay their fair share. I yield the remaining time to this amendment's co-sponsor, the gentlelady from California, Mrs. Capps.
I thank my colleague for yielding. Mr. Speaker, whether it's drilled on land, offshore, or transported via pipeline, oil spills are inevitable. Spills happen, and they will continue to happen regardless of what we've been told by the oil companies building and maintaining the pipelines. TransCanada says it will implement lots of safety measures, but accidents happen. In fact, accidents have already happened 14 times on the existing TransCanada Keystone pipeline, and they will almost certainly happen on the proposed Keystone XL pipeline too. Our amendment simply ensures that those responsible for the spill pay to clean it up. In 1969, my home district was victim to one of the worst oil spills in U.S. history. I know firsthand the devastating damage to human health, to property, to natural resources that are caused by oil spills. I know there have been numerous assurances that Keystone XL will be safer and spill risk will be minimal, but safer simply does not equal safe, especially when transporting tar sands crude. Tar sands crude is not only more corrosive and dangerous than conventional crude, but it's far more difficult to clean up in the event of a spill. We need look no further than the tar sands spill in Kalamazoo, Michigan in 2010. Nearly 3 years after that spill, the cleanup is still ongoing, and the costs are approaching $1 billion. A spill from Keystone could have similarly devastating impacts on America's heartland. If we're going to bear 100% of the spill risk as Americans, the least we can do is ensure that those responsible pay to clean it up. That's all this amendment does, and I think there's broad agreement on this point. This is our opportunity to fix the problem right now. If the Keystone XL pipeline is approved as is, the tar sands crude oil will literally get a free ride through the United States. Our amendment ends this. I urge my colleagues to end the free ride and vote for this amendment. And I yield back the balance of our time.
Yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Mr. Speaker, I wish to speak in 5 minutes in opposition to the motion recommit.
The gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, a review over how to treat crude oil derived from oil sands for the purposes of the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund is one, in fact, that we look forward to having. But it needs to be at the appropriate place and time. I got to say that we are fully supportive of the goals, purpose, and funding mechanisms of the trust fund, and we believe that the allocation of fees should be done equitably among crude oil received at a U.S. refinery and petroleum products entering the U.S. for use. However, a bill or an amendment this way to approve a single pipeline project is not the appropriate vehicle for this debate. Frankly, it needs to be part of the tax reform bill that I'm sure that Mr. Camp and others are going to move later on this year. So I wish we could have debated this as an amendment to this bill, but we don't have that opportunity. It's simply a motion to recommit. So let's push it to the right date, and that is part of tax reform later this year. Mr. Speaker, we have waited 1,700 days for this project. Many of us have folks that commute 80 to 90, even 100 miles a day. They need a source of gasoline. Canada provides 1.5 million barrels literally every day to the United States. They want to send as much as 6 million barrels by 2030. This is the best way to do it. Why send it by truck? Why send it by rail? Let's send it by pipeline. Safer, more economical, and in fact, it's going to help the consumer. I remind my colleagues that 62 members of the U.S. Senate earlier this year voted for this project. We need to do it here. Reject the motion to recommit and vote for final. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Speaker.
Gentleman from New York.
On that, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 5-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by a 5-minute vote on passage of the bill if ordered. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House this afternoon has been considering a bill that would allow construction of the northern portion of the Keystone XL pipeline by declaring that a presidential permit is not required to approve the route. This is the Democratic motion to recommit offered by Representative Tim Bishop of New York. A last chance to change the bill. It's a 5-minute vote on the House floor. And for some details and background on the legislation, we spoke earlier to a Capitol Hill reporter. Energy and environment reporter with National Journal. Amy Harder, what are Republicans in the House trying to prove by passing this Keystone pipeline bill? What are they trying to accomplish?
Well, it's important to know that this is actually the 7th time they've passed a bill to somehow approve the Keystone XL pipeline. And what they're trying to do is try to press on Obama and give him pressure to approve the pipeline. Right now it's going through a second round of reviews at the State Department, and they're trying to tell Obama this is a project that needs to be approved.
What's their economic argument for approving the pipeline?
They say that it will create jobs and create general economic growth around the route of the pipeline and just general economic growth for the country, and down in the Gulf where the pipeline ends, it'll help create refining jobs because it will bring more oil there to be refined. That's their argument. The State Department review actually found, however, that it only creates 35 permanent jobs.
What particular part of the pipeline does this bill cover?
That's a great question, because the pipeline is 1,700 miles long from Alberta, Canada, down to Texas. But part of the pipeline has already been approved. The southern leg of the pipeline, Obama went there during the campaign trail in Cushing, Oklahoma. The last 500 miles is already under construction. The top part, that's in Canada, is already under construction. So the part that we're actually talking about now is 875 miles long from the Canadian border down to Nebraska.
So Republicans are trying to accelerate the decision on that particular portion. Where is the administration in the process?
The administration has been very careful to say that the regulatory review process is going through regular law-mandated review at the State Department, which needs to review the project because it crosses international borders. And right now we're in the process where the State Department is reviewing public comments from the environmental assessment, and we can expect the final environmental assessment sometime later this summer, which then I think triggers another part of the process where agencies throughout the government will offer their feedback, which I think creates an ultimate decision on the pipeline later this year, toward the end of this year, and maybe even the beginning of 2014.
So is there any credence to what some Republicans have said, that the administration is slow-walking this process?
The administration is slow-walking this pipeline. The pipeline was on track to be approved all the way back in 2011. Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said in the end of 2010 that she was, quote, inclined to support it. But then it got caught up in presidential politics, and environmental groups galvanized around it. And then Obama announced, I think it was toward the end of November 2011, that he was going to delay it while it got further environmental reviews. I don't think the administration would admit that they're slow-walking it, but they are.
Well, back to the bill that the House is dealing with today. Some Democrats argued yesterday the bill itself was unconstitutional. What else are opponents going to say against the bill?
Right, and that's a key argument, because this bill actually goes further than previous iterations of the bill. It mandates the pipeline approved irrespective of the administration, and that actually goes counter to an executive order that puts the jurisdiction of a decision like this at the hands of the State Department. And so critics are complaining about that aspect. Representative Nick Rahall, who supports the pipeline and has supported past iterations of this bill, voted against this bill in the committee markup in the Transportation Committee because of this very argument that he says it gives a permit to a foreign company, TransCanada, and he says that we don't even do that for American companies. So I think you will definitely see this vote get fewer Democratic votes than previous votes on it.
Well, assuming passage then in the House today, what's ahead in the Senate?
That is a much tougher climb. I don't think that Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is going to bring up the House bill ever. He will face pressure from Senator John Hoeven, a Republican from North Dakota, who has been leading the effort in the Senate. He will definitely try to force a vote. Senator Heidi Heitkamp, Democrat from North Dakota, told me recently that if the administration doesn't act, that the Senate will take, quote, unilateral action. Now, of course, she says that, but I don't think it's going to be true. But you will see this push by small group of Democrats and Republicans, large group of Republicans, small group of Democrats, to try to get a vote. I understand that there may be a big fight on this come the debt ceiling limit this summer, where Republicans may force a fight on the Keystone XL pipeline in that respect.
Amy Harder's been our guest. She covers energy and environment issues for National Journal. Follow her on Twitter at Amy A. Harder, and also read articles by her and an interesting graphic on the pipeline at nationaljournal.com. Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
On this vote, the yeas are 193, the nays are 2.
Mr. Frelinghuysen. Mr. Frelinghuysen votes no. Mr. Yarmouth. Mr. Yarmouth votes aye.
On this vote, the yeas are 194, the nays are 223. The motion to recommit is not agreed to. The question is on passage of the bills. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to speak out of order for 1 minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Members, last week the largest caucus here in the House of Representatives, the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, which is made up of Republicans and Democrats, had its normal yearly shoot, which consists of trap, skeet, and sporting clays, and I am glad to say that this year that the Republicans retained the trophy. And if I could, I'd yield to my co-chair of the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, the gentleman from Mississippi.
Thank you. Well, all I can say to my colleague this time, you were lucky. And I look forward to next year. But the other thing you said is so important. The Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus is the largest caucus, bipartisan caucus here in Congress. Those of you who are not members, we ask you to come join us. We do a lot. But for the good that we do, the good that we serve, it's a good deal. Thank you very much.
I thank the gentleman, and Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from New Jersey.
I request a recorded vote, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlemen request a recorded vote. Those in favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
And it's likely to be the last recorded vote of the day. This is final passage on the bill that would approve construction of the northern portion of the Keystone XL pipeline from Alberta, Canada to Steel City, Nebraska, saying that a presidential permit is not required for approval. It would consider completed environmental impact statements sufficient to satisfy various requirements. It's a 5-minute vote, and then the House is back tomorrow to finish up the week ahead of the Memorial Day break. They will take up a bill tomorrow that would tie student loan interest rates to the 10-year Treasury note. Live coverage, of course, here on C-SPAN.
On this vote, the yeas are 241, the nays are 175, with 1 voting present, and the bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I send to the desk a privileged report from the Committee on Rules for filing under the rule.
Clerk will report the title.
Report to accompany House Resolution 232, resolution providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 1911 to amend the Higher Education Act of 1965 to establish interest rates for new loans made on or after July 1, 2013, and for other purposes.
Referred to the House calendar and ordered printed. For what purpose does the distinguished lady from North Carolina rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
And so ordered.
Suspensions?
Yeah, under suspensions. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the Chair will postpone further proceedings today on motions to suspend the rules on which a recorded vote for the yeas or the yeas and nays are ordered, or on which the vote incurs objection under Clause 6 of Rule 20. Record votes on postponed questions will be taken later. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move the House suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1949.
The clerk will report the title of the bill. Does the gentleman seek to pass the bill as amended?
Yes.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 1949, a bill to direct the Secretary of Education to convey the Advisory Committee on Improving Post-Secondary Education Data to conduct a study on improvements to post-secondary education transparency at the federal level.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Messer, and the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Andrews, each will control 20 minutes. The Chair recognizes the gentleman from Indiana.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks on H.R. 1949.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of H.R. 1949, the Improving Post-Secondary Education Data for Students Act. I want to thank Chairman Klein and Higher Education Subcommittee Chairwoman Fox for their work on and support of this measure. I also want to commend the Ranking Member, Mr. Miller, Subcommittee Ranking Member Hinuosa, and our Democratic Committee colleagues for their contributions to this bill. Few decisions in life